Hey, it's Gavin, Seim here, and we're out here on the road, and I went into this big-name sporting goods retailer today, and I thought, hey, what happens if I try to buy a gun on the record as a Patriot? Well, guess what happened? They said no. That's what they said. So I go into this major retailer, and I say, well, all right, I want to see what happens. I want to see and make sure that I can exercise my right. Now, of course, we don't really have the right because the government defines the right. We told the government shall not be infringed, and they say, well, you got to do checks and you got to do protocols, and that's why it's such a good thing to go under the radar and to not comply with this lawless government. But I thought, well, hey, here's this nice 1022 breakdown, right? I want to get this, and I want to see what happens when I exercise my right. And so we go through, and they ask me all these absurd questions that they have no right to ask, and we run the paperwork through, and then the people in the store, they come back to me kind of uncomfortably and say, well, it's delayed. It's delayed, so we can't sell you the gun. And so here's what happens. They give me some paperwork and information, and I go out and I make a phone call. I call Nix. I call the FBI. I say, what is going on? You guys are telling me that I can't buy a firearm? And they're saying, well, it's delayed. So here's what that means. It means that we can delay it indefinitely. Now, if the store does not hear from us within 3 days, they can sell it to you anyway, but if we come back and then deny it, after that, they have to report you or they have to try and get the firearm back, they said. Okay, now get this, it gets better. You can appeal the delay or the denial, they said. That takes 6 months to a year. And here's this list of things of why we deny it, but we won't tell you why we're denying it or delaying it. And we can't give you that information. You can only file the appeal, which takes 6 months to a year.
Thank you for calling the FBI Criminal Justice Information Services Division's NICS section.
I want to just make sure we're clear on this information that we're trying to get together, so that you're saying that not only now are we prohibited from buying guns if we're a felon, but with certain misdemeanors we're prohibited from buying firearms as well?
Mm-hmm. One of the federal prohibitors is if you have been convicted of a misdemeanor for more than 2 years, meaning you've received more than 2 years in jail. That is federally prohibiting.
Received or is punishable by a maximum of up to or more than 2 years in jail?
It could be punishable by more than 2 years.
So I'm in the store, we're talking about this, and the gentleman behind the counter, he's like, we should just be glad that we can buy guns at all. And I say, no, we shouldn't. We should exercise our rights. Because the government doesn't give us these rights. They're not a privilege, they're a right. We said shall not be infringed. And so here's the thing. It's not just the FBI, it's not just the people, it's the stores too, guys. It's these companies, and they could have the clout to stand up. They could have the clout to raise a stink, but they won't. Because it's more profitable just to play along, just to obey the lawless government. And so here's this government that has no authority to do background checks, that has no authority to deny, with a list of arbitrary rules, and they're telling me, a patriot, I can't buy a gun. That's what they're telling me. Now, I want to be very clear. There's been no due process here. I'm not a convicted felon or anything like that. Not that means anything. Not that should give them any authority, because being a felon means nothing. It's an arbitrary word now. They call anybody they want a felon so they can take away their rights.
I just want to recap because I want to make sure the world understands this. So we go to buy a gun and a firearm, and this background check is run asking us a series of personal questions like what is our race and a whole bunch of other stuff. Then this goes into a system which either immediately approves it, it delays it, or denies it. If it delays it, it can be delayed forever, in which case the seller, after 3 days, the FFL, can sell us the firearm, but if it then comes back as denied later, it's they have to follow through, and they have some level of accountability for having sold that firearm to try and report it and or get the firearm back. And if it is denied, there is an appeal process that takes up to a year, regardless of whether a person has been convicted of any crime in the United States or under the federal courts. And then throughout this process, you give us a tracking number for this background check, which is completely useless for tracking any information regarding why it's delayed, why it's denied, or how we can appeal it. Is everything I just laid out correct in terms of how our rights are treated by your agency?
I can't say 100%, but from what I remember you saying, I'm pretty sure you were correct, yes.
I don't be silent at the idea that I do not have the right, even though the right is not given to me by the Constitution, but by God himself, to protect myself and my family. But the government says, oh, well, no, we're not going to give you that right now. And so I wanted to find out what would happen if I tried to buy a gun on the record. I just did it today. And you know what happens? They said no. Folks, it's coming. It's getting bad. And it's not just about gun rights. It's about all of liberty. It's about equal liberty for all. It's about this lawless government. These same people telling me, a liberty-loving, peaceful patriot, that I can't buy a weapon to protect my family are the same ones that murdered Lavoy Finicum on the side of the road. They're the same ones that are locking away our patriots in prison and torturing them and abusing them and keeping them from their families. This same government that's dividing us and trying to keep everyone filled with hate against everyone else and saying, oh, we're protecting you from terrorists. Look at our TSA. Look at the bad Muslims. Look at the bad people at the border. Even though they're the ones creating ISIS, creating the terrorism, this government that says they get to define and decide our rights through their courts and their arbitrary rules, they are the terrorists. What are you going to do about it? God help us, friends. God help us.
Do the people that work in your agency take an oath to the United States Constitution?
I'm not sure that has anything to do with your questions about your transaction.
Well, it
So
certainly
is there
does, because
anything-
you work for a federal agency, and so I'm asking, have you taken an oath?
Did you have any more questions regarding your NTN?
You haven't answered my question. Did you take an oath to the United States Constitution?
Okay, sir. If you don't have any questions regarding your NTN, I'm going to have to terminate the call.
Why are you avoiding that question? Is it offensive to you that I would ask you if you've taken an oath to the Constitution?
Okay, I'm going to terminate the call. Thank you.
Oh, and for our friends in the federal government, guess what? I don't appeal to you. I don't need your approval. Just like when the redcoats tried to restrict guns in the colonies, people like Benjamin Franklin went out and they found other ways. Well, guess what? We will too. See ya.